All right, so welcome everyone to another Q&A Ask the Editor series. I am so excited today to have with us Sarah Wells. Hi, Sarah. Sarah is joining from Nevada, and Sarah is the founder of Glass Garage Collective, which so it houses a zine, Mother Tongue, but Glass Garage, it's obviously not a literary magazine. So today's a little different. We're going to be talking probably a lot about visual art as well, and outsider art and stuff like that. But anyway, Glass Garage Collective was created in May 2020 to house two projects, a mail art project called We Are All Guests Here, which sounds super cool, and I'm very excited to learn all about that, and a zine, Mother Tongue. And a little bit about Sarah. Sarah Wells is the founder and curator of We Are All Guests Here. Sarah envisioned the project as an experiment in collaboration and exchange. She is interested in collections of interdisciplinary works by diverse voices in diverse physical media. So welcome again to everybody tuning in. Thanks, Alyssa, for joining us. And welcome, Sarah. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Oh, I'm delighted. Thank you, Becky, for having me and for that nice introduction.
So tell us, let's just step back and talk about Glass Garage Collective. I found it pretty recently. What inspired you? What is it? And yeah, take it away from there.
Glass Garage Collective has kind of been rolling around in my mind for a little while. The idea of a virtual gallery, a meeting place on sort of the main street that is the vast main street that is the internet.
Yeah.
And then, I think like so many people this past year, when we kind of stripped away so much of our activities and we're left wondering really how to connect and how to create. I was feeling that void about not having museums and galleries and libraries to go to, that I finally put this sort of dream of getting a website up with, and I had the time to engage and learn how to do that, and found that it wasn't a huge endeavor financially, and Glass Garage Collective was born, and it was really in conjunction with the mail art project.
Okay.
So in some ways the mail art project was the reason why I really put into actuality the website, because the mail art project needed somewhere to live. That was the work to fill a virtual gallery. And the mail art project was absolutely the need for connection, the idea that we creatives and a lot of people who maybe are not creatives as their primary employment, but are making or expressing themselves, and especially during quarantine when there's fear, but also extra time and a need for creative outlet, to make work and then have a place to put it into a collection and to exchange it. And I really loved the idea of mail art, which of course has a long history in surrealist and data expression, to exchange artwork outside of primary institutions, which was less of a political movement, I would say, back in May 2020, and more of a necessity. I mean, there just were not primary institutions to go to. So
Yeah.
so that is sort of the birth of those two projects. Yeah.
So cool. I have so many questions, but I want to just back up quickly and ask you, can you explain the name Glass Garage Collective? What is that about?
Yeah, well, it's really funny. And if anybody has ever sort of like had an inkling for a project and then realized that you need to buy a domain, you quickly realize that your like intended name might not fit into what's available domain wise. So there was a lot of like just musing on what would be the name, and I really liked a collective. And I was ultimately the Glass Garage Collective came about because I wanted it to be a project space. And I thought that there are so many people that do their projects or their art or their writing and creativity in like a garage type space. Like
Yeah,
we are the makers that don't necessarily have studios, or we don't go to work for our artwork. We do it in our garage, or
totally,
we do it in
totally.
our home space.
Basement or yeah,
Wherever we can fit it, we make it happen. And then the glass was, you know, the idea of looking in and seeing what people are doing, and kind
mm,
of envisioning this world of which, wouldn't it be so cool to actually have like physical glass garages where we are all sort of privy to seeing what people are tinkering with or creating or just
right.
enjoying after work or before work or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's really cool. It sounds like there have been a lot of constraints that have actually inspired you, like the constraint of not having a, a precious studio space, and then the constraint of not being able to go to a museum, and you found a way to make these artistic projects and help people foster connection, which is incredible. It's really cool.
I've never thought of it like that, constraint wise, and I am a bit of a maker myself, and so I love that you made that connection, because I know with writing and prompts and all of that,
Mm,
how helpful constraints can be. But I
right,
hadn't thought of it for this project, and you're
right.
right.
Huh.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so tell us about mail art, because I saw that you linked to the Tate, but it clearly has a long history before the Tate Museum. So yeah, tell us about the history, and then what you're up to with it now.
Sure. So mail art was it is most centralized in a surrealist expression and a data expression, um, meaning that it can feel sort of irrelevant. It can feel a little bit political or has activist roots, which is that, like I mentioned before, art created and viewed outside of what you would consider mainstream institutions,
Mhm.
museums, even gallery spaces, that, there's people really curating based on a certain taste or a certain canon. And it's a lot about, in fact, restrictions and who is
Right.
not involved or who
Mhm.
is not shown. And other than that, it's an incredibly wide sort of definition of what can be mail art. At its
Mhm.
most basic, it's simply um, art exchanged through the mail. So and and for We Are All Guests here, it's there are size restrictions
Mhm.
based on the post office box. But other than that, I mean, it certainly has been more of a visual art expression.
Mhm.
But there have been poems received, um, and a few actually made books with
Mhm.
writing inside. So it has a place in art history, mail art, but I would say it's so open, and
Mhm.
that almost seems to be the most important part of it, is
Right.
its inclusivity and its ability to be interpreted as needed. And interestingly, in this project, there is an expression of art called fluxus, which
Mhm.
I have also learned more about through this project, which is seeing art and, importantly, exchanging art in sort of just non-traditional expressions of art. I
Mhm.
mean, really surrealist. I mean, sometimes I think that people I've gotten artwork that is just other male, I mean, it's sort of like you could think really, for example, I received an envelope full of, like physical therapy notes. Somebody had been prescribed sort of this physical therapy routine, and that was it. That was
Sure,
the
sure,
entirety of
yeah.
the envelope. And so it's open for my interpretation
Mhm.
about what or why somebody would choose to send that. And it did have a Fluxus stamp on it, which
Mhm.
indicates to me that somebody they had something to say, but in fact it might not be about my interpretation. It
Right,
could be, it's more about the true fact of which we know is that this was given to one person for another person for an art project. That's
right,
really all we know about it.
right.
And again, and this is what we do with art. I can make my interpretation.
Mhm.
The sender surely has his interpretation, but in the end, we don't know,
Right.
and that's the wonderful thing about the collection, because you just kind of see all of the ways in which individuals want to release something into the
Yeah,
world, and they know
so
that it's
cool.
going to be received.
Right, right. And it probably wouldn't have occurred to them to make that experience of going to a physical therapist somehow an art collection, but because of the project, suddenly they're thinking this could actually be curated and have like some kind of aesthetic value. Um,
By the very nature of the exchange,
mhm.
giving and receiving, we have something bigger
Right,
than just a few pieces of paper with physical therapy notes on it.
right, right. This is reminding me, there's actually an artist, I forget her name, but she makes art out of her student debt. So she, like, one of her projects is to post the letters of her university, I think, like denying her. I need to look into it more, but it's this idea that these like very big now, almost bureaucratic experiences can somehow be elevated into art, given a platform like this, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And it has something really to say about, I think, individual experience in
Mhm.
a collective. I mean, what do we what do we want people to know about ourselves? And for so
Right.
long, that's been expressed through more traditional forms of art, or
Mhm.
creating characters. But ultimately, our experience of the world is like this mundane paperwork. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
that is that is really a true expression of the human
Right,
experience.
right. So what happens? So what is the process? So somebody sends you a bunch of physical therapy receipts or whatever it is, love letters, whatever, poems, artwork, and then what happens?
So I have a PO box here in State Line, Nevada, and I visit it about once a week. Um, and I receive these physical pieces of artwork. Another thing to mention about mail art is the emphasis on envelope art.
Mhm.
So obviously,
Mm.
right from the moment of receiving, I have this beautiful something in my hands.
Right.
The envelope sort of is the introduction to what's
Mhm.
inside. And I take it home. I photograph it in a light box. I photograph it from, I don't, I don't open it until I can photograph the envelope. I have, you know, my my special envelope opener that I use for this project. I try to make a ritual out of receiving these objects. Um, and so I open them, and in the most like least intrusive way, and just take a moment to see what's in my hands here, and if there's anything, often they are both front and back.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes they have a lot of collage. I've received a lot of collage work. So just sort of experiencing the artwork, and then it's photographed again in the light box, and it's added by a month received onto the glassgaragecollective.com website and
Okay.
this gallery.
Okay. And is everything added or
Everything is added. There
okay.
is no and I really, if there are additional pieces, and I have some. So yes, everything is added, and I will say, like, even included are business cards, or I haven't received like any instructions, but when I was making sort of the FAQs for this project, I just was like, anything that I receive in an envelope will be considered a part of the full work.
Right.
So sometimes, I like stickers, just anything, everything gets photographed and archived on the website. And it's I try to do it. I have experience working in a museum. I also just love to go to museums,
Mm,
and so I have tried to mirror the didactics you see on museums, which is
mm,
numbering by submission, acquisition. Um, if it's signed, I will write who it's signed by. I do the postmark, address, and I measure everything, which is
mhm.
the hardest thing to convey on a digital gallery is
Right.
size.
Right. Okay. So you keep, so all the originals you're keeping.
That's
And
right.
then, yeah, okay. And then it's displayed. How many submissions have you received?
I've received in the past year over 50 submissions.
Okay.
And it's really been interesting. So when I first started this project, I did a ton of posters. I thought, call for some artist submissions, posters are going to be it.
Right.
And I also live in an area that has a really interesting juxtaposition between locals and tourists.
Mm,
And I was originally thinking that this art project would kind of be a conversation between local makers and maybe tourist makers. How do we see and engage with Tahoe similarly and differently? And the posters, I mean, I still have not received many submissions from the Tahoe region.
so
It
interesting.
it has been, by and large, outreach via Facebook,
Huh.
via different Fluxus or mail art groups. And I have had quite a few international submissions
Mm,
from individuals who definitely look for mail art projects to participate in.
mhm. Okay. And is
Yeah.
it all visual? It sounds like it's mostly visual work because that's the kind of thing that can be displayed.
It is, yes, mostly
Mhm.
visual work, although quite a bit of you know, words, poems,
Mhm.
um, thoughts, quick. I would say postcards are common, and they do include notes, or just what I would say is maybe like I don't know, like a personal sort of mantra or something. I mean,
Yeah.
again, that's sort of in some ways you could call it a title to a work, I
Okay.
think, but I also tend not to, because of the nature of the mail. Seems like it's more of a letter or a
Right.
thought.
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting. So you're like a curator of people's innermost experiences. I mean, I guess that to some degree, that's true about all editors, that they're receiving these heartfelt experiences, but somehow this seems more raw, even like if somebody just decided with no letter, maybe they just decided to send you like a pair of children's socks, which would be so profound. And just, I think the openness of the interpretation somehow is more powerful than, I mean, it's all powerful, but it's just making me think how like you're in this really interesting position to be kind of collecting people's experiences, especially now.
Absolutely. And the act of receiving it is really so meaningful. I mean, I understand that. I think that there's something really powerful in letting something go in my experience, and I hope that that is um at least maybe considered
Mm,
when somebody is sending mail art to this project. But it's not lost on me how meaningful it is to receive this, that it's been entrusted in some way, not only in the physical object, but yes, the emotions that go with it.
yeah. So have
And
you, oh, sorry. I'm just curious if you've seen any like overarching trends, or if what do people have to say this year?
yeah, I'm so glad that you asked. So it started in May 2020, and I would say through at least August of 2020,
Mm.
the overarching theme was loneliness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
not surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, and peppered with amazing displays of like hope
Hmm.
and acknowledgement of the impact of art,
Hmm.
sort of self-referential
Yeah.
in the that when that art and hope are linked.
Hmm.
And and then and then amazingly, it has shifted. I see what's being received now as with having a much more playful
Huh.
content matter.
Right.
And I will say, and part of it, and like again, I think, and as an editor, is that I can't help but put my own experiences onto
Right.
this receiving.
Hmm.
Uh, but I try to at least be objective. But like, I felt that there was a real turn, and in part because it was a turn for me when I started to receive these postcards, about 4 or 5 of them, um, and they were all coming from the same town in Virginia,
Hmm.
and they were collage work. And I sort of, was like inputting them, and I kind of just get in the groove. And then I realized that they were all from different submitters. They were like 5 different women, their
Hmm.
names. And one or two of them had mentioned in the postcard that they were from a Bridgewater, Virginia college
Hmm.
class. And I was like, I thought, there's an art class at this college where at least several of the art students are using my project to further their project.
Right.
And I just thought that that was like the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And it really, like, that was for me when I started to be like, oh, this is getting a lot more playful.
Mm.
This is like, we're kind of playing like cat and mouse a little bit more as like sender receiver.
Right. Right.
Um, so and so now for me, even like, it's just that broke open this sense of like this project um being a more playful exchange
Mhm.
than what I had seen in the past, which was a real void of connection that the artwork was searching for.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I imagine some of it, especially at the beginning, would be kind of self-selecting, like people who have decided, I'm not getting what I need socially. I'm not getting it through the internet. There's a connection that I need to make
Yeah.
desperately, and I'm going to send this cartoon or this comic or whatever it is to this person through the mail.
Yes.
Um, and
And
yeah.
I wanted it to be like that.
Hmm.
I wanted it to, I was lonely in May
Sure.
2020.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a place of
Mhm.
which there was a prevailing sense of this is a place of collection and
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah. How many of the submissions are anonymous?
Probably less than half.
Okay.
Um, More people choose to sign their work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, and include social media links, include their
Oh,
personal
okay.
website.
Oh, okay. So they're like, they want to get out there.
They
Yeah.
are artists.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting.
Mhm.
So tell us, so that's just one of the projects at Glass Garage Collective. Tell us also about Mother Tongue, the zine.
Uh, Mother Tongue the zine has not yet reached issue 1.
Oh, okay.
It's totally a dream of mine to find short stories, poetry, more literary work
Hmm.
to display in a zine that might additionally include, some of the artwork that's been received in a thematic way.
Hmm.
So, and to pair this kind of work, I um, I write short stories myself. This My other sort of, non-public quarantine work was with a friend who I grew up with. We reconnected and had sort of a Friday night writing exchange.
Hmm.
And so I felt like writing was my deep sort of like route to sanity and creative outlet.
Hmm.
And so my hope is that Mother Tongue will host more literary work.
Okay. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I notice in the call for artists, you specifically say like you're interested in outsider art and you want, you know, and you like people who don't identify as writers and MFA
Mhm,
graduates
mhm.
and mothers and workers and like the whole range. And it's interesting also that you're calling Mother Tongue a zine instead of like a literary journal. And zine kind of has that, that punk rock feel to it, that it's like outside the establishment, it's sort of more underground. So is that part of what you're envisioning, that it would be like it might not fit into the more mainstream literary journal culture?
Yeah, this is where, and it's probably why the zine hasn't fully launched yet, is because
Mhm.
it's almost still a nugget of conception as I continue to like learn about the structure of receiving literary work.
Mhm.
I mean, I like I personally just like zines and holding zines, and I would love to get it printed.
Mhm.
Um, and because of the tie-in with the visual artwork, and that the visual artwork really has sort of like, an outsider or at least self-taught component, that
Yeah.
zine felt the most appropriate, of like both grassroots from my end of it,
Mhm.
and a real, I think the biggest thing for me in sort of any of the areas of call for art that I'm engaging in, it's that if you have an inkling to share something, to me you are a creative. If
Mhm.
you um pursue art or writing, you are an artist, and that it's worthwhile to display or publish on any path of that sort of expertise, from
Yeah.
amateur to expertise, that there's nothing, you do not have to be your most taught, your most learned
Mhm.
stage of artist to participate in the projects that I'm creating.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Also, I think it's important, like you don't need it sounds like on some level you're a gatekeeper, but it's a very open gate. If you're accepting all the artwork that comes in, like, so it's I think it's wonderful. It's wonderfully refreshing because so many like you feel like you need permission or you need approval or you need validation from like the blob of gatekeeping experts. But it's really wonderful to just have a space where, somebody is saying, you're just playing and I want to see what you do while you play, because that's really interesting and artistic too.
You're reminding me like of these old ranches in northern Nevada or Northern California where everything is gone from the ranch except the entryway, or like there's stone sort of like that was once a doorway, but everything
Right.
else is like gone to age. Like, yeah, that's me. Like you can walk you can walk around it. There's like a little bit of structure.
Right.
Um, but yeah, and to your there's power in the collective,
Mhm.
a single work that is maybe, not it's not on the path, it's not the most refined work that this maker is going to make. He or she will go on to make much more refined work, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. The power of the collective really legitimizes everybody's. I mean, it's sort
Mhm.
of like an all boats rise kind of deal,
Yeah.
um because like what we talked about with themes and seeing the connections, it elevates, I think it elevates each individual work because it is a collective.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think about this a lot, this idea of like value and how do we decide what we value. And sometimes, so often something is valuable because somebody says that it's valued. So you're providing this
Definitely
service.
are.
You're basically you're saying I value your work,
Mm.
and then it becomes valuable through that process, which just enforces, like, I mean, it's good for all artists to have that experience.
Here, here. Yeah, it is. It
Well,
is.
it's so refreshing because I mean, I think like, so I mean the process of submitting, well, you're a fiction writer too, and Alyssa, we were talking about this just the other day, that the process of submitting is so grueling, and you very much feel like your work is being judged, right? But you feel like the value of your work is so often at the mercy of these other people who decide, and how is aesthetic value determined, and who decides what makes something like good art or publishable work, and all these kind of subjective things that determine whether you're going to make it or not. So it's wonderfully refreshing to have somebody providing a space that is just like, yeah, we want to see whatever you got. We just want to see you express whatever it is you want to express.
Yeah, I'm glad that comes through.
Mhm. It actually makes me wonder, like, if at any point you'll put a limit. I guess because it's all online, like there's no restriction for you. Like if you start receiving after this interview, for example, if you start receiving millions of submissions,
Yeah.
what will you do?
Yes, I suppose, like, I haven't reached the point where the post office is like, we cannot handle the volume. I have not reached the point where my apartment cannot physically archive the work.
Right.
Those two would be at least one barrier to, what next for this project.
Mhm.
I've I've considered, so this call for mail art has been now on for over a year, and I've considered at some point maybe changing the theme, um, or seeking, maybe seeking other areas in which it's it's different. It sort of closes this project,
Mhm.
but for now, yeah, it feels like it's still properly and successfully um ongoing.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. And you're working with a friend on this, so you're not by yourself. There's somebody.
So this project is the Mail Art Project in Glass Garage Collective is entirely my project.
Mm,
I have I would say, a creative partner who in my own practice of artwork and art
mhm,
making and writing. Um, and she and I would love, again, the wheels are always turning, to do open it up to some more like workshop events
mm,
or we had last October, we decided to do a showcase of artwork for a weekend over holiday or over Halloween weekend. And we themed it dark but cathartic themes. And we were like blown away by the sort of interest and people sharing artwork separately from the mail art project, but for
mhm,
this sort of showcase. So we're thinking about doing that again, and again, that's hosted on Glass Garage Collective, and I think it goes to show too, like the limitations of a virtual space. I
yes.
mean, ultimately, the gallery is a wonderful collective of makers from all over the world, but we still need our people who we call and our people
Mhm,
who we talk to and our people who will read our work and give us feedback on a extended period of time. So, a virtual collective is only just that. It's a good gathering space
mhm,
to view work and to see what's going on. But we need more. I do.
mhm.
I always need more connection and more
Right,
creatives
right.
to talk to.
Sure. That it's an interesting thing because I think a lot of galleries generally are transitioning online, which, yeah, I'm not following the art world that closely, but it seems kind of disappointing in some way. Or I guess it's good for artists if you can sell your work that way. But the experience, there's nothing like going to an actual gallery and seeing the tactile work.
Absolutely. I mean, as a viewer,
Mhm,
absolutely. And I think when I see this artwork online, and I actually just put some new original music by a bassist out of Nashville, Tennessee on the front page. So, the hope is that you can make it as much of an experience as when you walk into a gallery and you can view art and hear music. And I even would I have a friend that is a chef, and I'm like, maybe you just, you take pictures of little like bites and put the
right.
recipes up there. And you can kind of
We need the
you're
cheese cubes.
you're you're getting like you can make it as robust of all of like the boxes you check for like
Right.
an event, an art event, but there is, and I think it's worthwhile really being aware of like the huge thing you are missing, which is
Mhm,
the actual people and
right.
rubbing elbows, sharing space.
Right. Absolutely.
And my feeling is that you know, we had to do what we had to do for the
Mhm,
past 15 months, but that seeing that void in the virtual space only makes me desirous to be back with people
mhm,
more.
mhm.
It's not a replace, virtual galleries are not a replacement.
Right.
It should, if anything, just, hope that like the real people interaction
Mhm,
is it. I mean,
right.
that's kind of that's
Mhm.
it.
Do you anticipate showing the mail artwork in an actual gallery at any point?
I would love to. I would
Mhm.
really love to. I think it would be a really great like Tahoe Visitor Center
Yeah.
uh, kind of display or something like a pop-up. And of course I have visions of mailing those that invitation out to everyone who submitted and saying,
Right.
it's in a physical space now. Like, if you can come,
Yeah.
you know, to see it come full circle like that would be
That would be
incredible.
really cool. I could see actually some demand for that if it's like what it's just so interesting. Like you created this project during this hopefully once in a lifetime experience. You know, what is the record? You have this incredible record of this
Yes.
this quarantine time, this time of desperation. I would think there would be some demand to see what people were communicating.
Are you finding in the literary making during this time that there's also a demand for work about the pandemic?
I think it's mixed, actually. I've seen calls for submissions specifically about that. And then I've seen editors have said people aren't writing about that at all. I interviewed one editor who was saying people are looking back. They're mostly writing about their childhoods. They almost
Interesting.
like don't want to address it.
Not go
Um,
there. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I'm taking advantage of the moment here. Like,
Do it.
do you I liken this experience, and again, I'm from the East Coast, so this is kind of where this is coming from, but like these moments that are so out of our control and so traumatizing, like in your experience, are people writing about, say, like 9/11? Like I would say that was like at least in my life, like the prior sort of great trauma.
Mhm.
And part of the question is like, do people write about trauma that happens in their lifetime that's so big? And do you think that is there a timeline of which writers need to pause to then look back at something like that?
I think it really depends. I mean, what I'm seeing a lot of now, maybe this has been going on for a while, but I think there are a lot more dystopian stories and apocalyptic stories. So people come at it through a different angle where they're not expressly writing about lockdowns and a pandemic, but they're
Sure.
writing about some kind of event, a big event.
Okay. Okay. And um I would say that has been the same for the mail art project. There's some artwork that references exactly disease or exactly,
Right.
I'm thinking of a piece of work that has that coronavirus cell,
Oh,
intricate
wow.
in it. But it's not, it's a more of an existential
Right. Right.
loneliness or
Yeah. It's really interesting. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think I mean the same is true for me when I write. It's like the last thing that you want to kind of think about because it's so omnipresent that when you write, you just want to go somewhere else. So I suspect that's true. And a lot of editors, I think, are also feeling like we don't want to read about, we want to read about really anything else. Um,
Yeah.
but if it's on your mind, but for people who want to write about, yeah, whatever works.
Yeah, I just think, like we're talking about trends and whatnot,
Mhm.
interesting to hear this, and just at the end of the day, even if we are um creating, we are still humans first, and
Mhm.
we need to protect our sense of, you know, sanity, for lack of a
Right,
better word, by maybe
right.
not engaging in what institutions there. The Smithsonian is asking for um art or like collectible objects that relate back to quarantine. I mean, collecting
Oh,
masks, having physical objects of which we will at some point move
right,
past from.
right.
Um, they
Like
want
a wall of masks for,
a wall of
yeah,
masks, like the signage,
yeah,
physical things that at some point we will see on display
right.
as a memory, as a moment in time that we were all doing these things in our daily lives, but
Mhm.
become objects of, symbolism
Right,
later.
right. We hope so. I I'm very eager for them to become symbols.
Yeah, sooner than later.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been really fun and kind of meandering, but just really informative and interesting. And I love your project. It sounds so cool. So for people who want to get more involved, do you have any need? It doesn't sound like right now you have like a major need for like interns or anything like that.
I have, I welcome, in the same vein of like, there is no gate here.
Mhm.
I welcome any sort of outreach that says, I have an idea and can it fit into the Glass Garage Collective
Oh, cool.
platform. I would, I'm just one person with one, area. I basically created this platform for sort of exactly this, which is like,
Mhm.
is there opportunities for people that have other projects or would like to display it.
Mm.
So I do, I mean, I welcome, any like creative idea for engaging with a platform that I have now.
That's great. And
Yeah.
for submissions, are submissions open year round? No, no.
Yeah, so we are all guests here. The Mail Art Project has an ongoing call for submissions. There's a PO box and it's all on the website. There's even details which might be helpful for artists just in general on suggestions of how to wrap your art, how to mail your
Oh,
art
okay.
that is safe, and then just, I there's always questions of releasing art into the world and what mail art is, and I tried to address that on the frequently asked questions page online.
Okay. And it's glassgaragecollective.com.
That's right. Yeah.
So people know they can find you. And are you
Sounds so
on
good.
Twitter,
Yeah, here we
social
go.
media? Or do you have any of those things that you can tell us about?
Instagram
Okay.
at Glass Garage Collective, and a Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool, Sarah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. This was just really illuminating. It's just such a cool project.
I had so much fun. Thank you
Thank you.
for your thoughtful questions and real sense of what the project is trying to achieve, which is humble but grand, it's humble because it's just a little corner of the internet, but grand in which I truly believe all people are engaging in art and art making, and this is just a place to express that.
Totally.